It's one of the guys that could.
You're a little bitter. All right, good evening. Baruch Hashem, the final blot for most of us. I am not one of them, but the final blot of Maseches Sanhedrin. I have another 15. I got five in. I got five, which is good, but I have another 15 to go. So I'll be pounding late tonight. It'll be great. We are right now about three-fourths of the way down on Kuf Yud Beis, Amud Beis. This Kuf Yud Gimel, of course, is one of the most unique looking blot in Shas. There are some other weird shapes, but this is one of the weird ones. And Amir Hashem, over the course of the next 25 minutes or so, we'll get to the end of this Masechta. The Pasuk says about an Irani Dachas that everything has to be destroyed. And the Mishnah says over here that Trumos Yirkavu, that's the two dots where we are, about 15 lines or so from the bottom of the page, first words on the line, Trumos Yirkavu. And there's two versions of how Rav Chizda wanted to try and understand this line. Amar Rav Chizda, Lo Shanu, Ela Truma B'Yad Yisrael. When do we say that the Truma has to be Yir Kavu, that we have to let it rot, meaning we don't burn it and he can't eat it? That's true when it's B'Yad Yisrael. Well, what's Yisrael going to do with Truma? He's not allowed to eat it. He has to donate it. But now there's a din on the community of Irani Dachas. So what do you do? So then it's Yir Kavu. Aval Truma B'Yad Kohen. But if the Truma has already been given by the Yisrael to the Kohen, then Kevan de Mamonehu, since really now I've given it over, now that I've given it to the Kohen, it's no different than any other coin the Kohen would have in his property. It's Mamonehu, and then Tisaref. So that's his little taich on Trumos Yirkavu, is that Trumos are only Yirkavu if it's Truma that's still in the hand of the Yisrael. But once it's been given over to the Kohen, nothing doing. Says the Gemara that doesn't work. Masiv Rav Yosef. Rav Yosef says, hold on one second. Meiser Sheni v'Kisvei HaKodesh Yignezu. Our Mishnah had also said that when it comes to Meiser Sheni, as well as Kisvei Kodesh, we're going to talk about that on the top of the next Amud, we had said there that they're Yignezu, that they get buried. Why? Meiser Sheni b'Yad Yisrael. When Meiser Sheni is in the hand of a Yisrael, he's allowed to eat that. That's Ketruma b'Yad Kohen Dami. The Katani Yignezu. So why would you say Yignezu? That doesn't make any sense. If Rav Chizda is right, that Truma B'Yad Kohen is Mamone, then it should be that Meiser Sheni B'Yad Yisrael is also Mamone, and it should be burned, yet the Mishnah says Yignezu. So version 1 of Rav Chizda has to be wrong, because that which is in the possession of the Kohen, he wanted to say that it's Mamone, but this Brisa, our Mishnah, I should say, which says that Meiser Sheni is Yignezu, that shouldn't be true if Rav Chizda is right. So the Gemara says, good, you knocked that version of Rav Chizda out of the water. Let's try another version of Rav Chizda. Ella, itmar hachi itmar. If there is a statement that was made by Rav Chizda, this is likely to be what it was. Amar Rav Chizda, lo shanu, that we say trumos yirkavu, lo shanu, that the truma has to rot, ella truma biyad kohen, that the truma that's in the possession of the kohen has to rot. Aval truma biyad Yisrael, but when the truma is in the hands of the Yisrael, meaning I have to give truma, but I didn't donate it quite yet, so then tinasin lekohen shabir acheres. We don't burn it. We don't say yignazu. We don't say yirkavu. What do? You have a chiyuv. You're a yid. You're a Yisrael. It's not yours.
Said Afal Peking, and then he's going to worry about the halacha of finding a kohen to give his truma.
Unbelievable, Zaf.
It's just so far beyond me.
Right.
What is our thing? Is so far beyond me.
Oh, I thought you were saying something else.
This is not a good guy.
Yeah.
And yet we're detailing, you give it to the local kohen, you find another kohen.
Word is a good guy, right? When all said and done, you've got if
the whole city went off,
if it's the same,
and they were warned.
If it's the same like taiva as what we experience now,
yeah,
then you could see it'd be a perfectly good guy. You just
agree. I can't wrap my head around it.
I thought you were saying something else. I thought you were saying this guy has a din mavis. They're about to cut his head off. And he's like, before you do that, I just have to give some truma in another community. I'll be back.
Stronger point.
Yeah. That's literally what I thought you were saying. I didn't even think about what you were thinking. That was what happened in my head until he questioned you.
About how they had to give to each person, they're vested on every corner.
Unbelievable.
Does he give it to the Kohen, or they take it from him and give it to him?
It says Tinasein lekohen shebe'ir acheres.
Maybe Tinasein is it will be given. And I mean, maybe you're right. Maybe you're right.
It should be given, right? It would have been Yinasein if it was him.
Maybe it's
That's a fascinating deal. Oh, I wonder if it's true. Oh well, no time.
Yes.
Let's go.
Okay.
So says the second version of Rav Chizda is that the Truma B'Yad Yisrael is not shaykh to the din of Ir Nidachas at all. It's got regular halachos on him. He's got to give up his Truma and he's got to give it to a Kohen. There's no Kohen over here and they're about to kill you. Okay, so then it's got to go to another a Kohen in another community. Says the Gemara, this should be Tanya. It's a weird syntax. We don't usually say Tanya Hasam. It says Tanan Hasam, but it's in fact not a Mishnah. And in the note on the side here, I have a little note that says Ein Zeh Mishnah Ela Braisa, V'ayin Rashal V'ayin Be'er Sheva. So again, the syntax is a little weird. We don't usually see Tanya Hasam. I don't think we've ever seen Tanya Hasam, but I couldn't say so sweepingly, but it certainly doesn't sound familiar to me. So what does this brisa say? Isa shel meiser sheni. If there's dough of meiser sheni, p'tura min achala divrei Reb Meir. Reb Meir says that it's pater from chala. The chachamim mechayvin. They say you are chayiv in chala on the isa of meiser sheni. Amar Rav Chizda. Rav Chizda looks at this machlokes about isa shel meiser sheni, and he says the machlokes of Rav Meir and the chachamim is b'meiser sheni b'Yerushalayim. That's when the Meiser Sheni is already in the walls of Yerushalayim. The Rav Meir Savar Meiser Sheni Mamon Gavoahu. That because the Meiser Sheni is Mamon Gavoa, you're going to be pater from Chala because you have no chiyuv to be mafresh if it's Mamon Gavoa. If I'm being mafresh Chala in my house, if my wife is being mafresh Chala in my house, that's ours. We're being mafresh. But if the Isa of Meiser Sheni belongs to the Gva, so then who am I to give Challah? There's no Chiyuv of Challah, that was not mine. The Rabbanon Savre know that the Meiser Sheni in Yerushalayim is still Mamon Hedyothu. Aval. And this is the line that we're going to question over here, based on Rav Chizda's understanding of this little brisa about Isa Shel Meiser Sheni. Aval Bigvulen, outside of Yerushalayim Bigvulen, in the non-Yerushalayim cities, then divrei hakol pater, everyone would agree that you're pater from the chala. Masi Rav Yosef. Rav Yosef says, wait 1 second, I don't understand how you could be pater on everything. After all, we said, and we saw this brayso already, Meiser Sheni v'kisvei HaKodesh yignezu. We said that when it comes to Meiser Sheni and when it comes to kisvei HaKodesh, they need to be buried. B'mayos skinan. What is that case of Meiser Sheni where we say that it has to be yignezu? Remember, we just said that Meiser Sheni b'gvulin is going to be pater. Here we see Meiser Sheni is Yignezu. Ilema b'Yerushalayim, first possible answer. If you want to say that we're talking about in Yerushalayim, well, that can't be, because Yerushalayim cannot be an Ir Hanidachas. That is a great trivial pursuit question. In what city can there never be an Ir Hanidachas? Could be all of them, according to David's rationale, because it's impossible to reach the threshold. But even without that, border cities, other exceptions, very good. Someone's paying attention to something. Is Rabbi Reznik? I don't know who you're listening to. It says the Gemara, Mi havya ira nidachas, Yerushalayim. The Ukimta can't be that our Mishnah, when it says Meiser Sheni b'chisvei HaKodesh yignezu, that can't be talking about Yerushalayim, because Mi havya ira nidachas v'atanya. Asar dvaram nemru b'Yerushalayim zuachas, man. Here's one of the 10 things that was said about Yerushalayim. Ein anases, ira nidachas. And if you want to say ve'ela, that when our Brisa says that Meiser Sheni is Yignezu, that is Be'ir Acheres, it's another city, Ve'askuhu legava, and it was brought into Yerushalayim, and therefore we say Yignezu. No, it wouldn't be buried there either. Why not? Because Kaltuhu Mechitzos, because the walls of Yerushalayim have already accepted this Meiser Sheni into the walls. This is a takana derabanan, that when a food that has a din of gniza enters into Yerushalayim, the food morphs. It's done. Now it's mutter to eat. So if you want to say the food came from outside Yerushalayim and was brought in, because mechitzos koltos, because the walls of Yerushalayim changed the status of the food, we wouldn't eat gniza there either. Elalav, perhaps this little brisa of Meiser Sheni Yignezu is talking about Elalav B'Gvulin, and still the Katani Yignezu. So the only way, according to Rav Yosef, that we can understand the phrase, first of the long lines, Meiser Sheni v'chisvei HaKodesh yignezu, the only way to understand it is talking about B'Gvulin. So that would mean that according to this brisa, Meiser Sheni B'Gvulin is yignezu. But if you look at the beginning of the first of those long lines, it says B'Gvulin divrei hakol pater. So which one is it? Do we say that Meiser Sheni is completely pater when it's B'Gvulin, like we saw previously with Rav Chiza's explanation of the Machlokes of Meir and the Rabbanan, or no? Do we say like Rav Yosef's explanation that when we're talking about Gvulin, it still has a din of Geniza? So the Gemara says, great question. Look, le'olam di'ir acheres ve'askuhu legava. Really, the Meiser Sheni is from another city, and yes, it's in Yerushalayim, and we're still going to say that there's Geniza. Why? Because v'hacha b'mayaskinan shenitma. It's not that the food doesn't have mechitzos koltos. Yerushalayim is a powerful entity, and it morphs the food into that which is edible, technically. However, we have a secondary problem, which is that the food is tameh. Says the Gemara, so what if the food is tameh? Make it tahor. Vilifrike, it's Meiser Sheni. Cash out. Go take your Meiser Sheni and sell it and take the coins and go buy more food. Why are we saying that nitma is the reason that we have to do geniza? Go sell it. Where do we see that you can sell it? Damar Belazar, minayin l'maiser sheni, express statement from the Amoraim. Minayin l'maiser sheni shenitma shepodin asa afilu b'Yerushalayim. This is exactly the problem of our Gemara. Talmud Lomar, the pasuk says lo suchal seis. So that's what the pasuk says. Ve'ein seis ala achila. If you're not able to eat it, shnemar reisa masas me'es panav. Ignoring all of the nuances of the drasha, but lo suchal say so. If you're not able to eat it, then you can be podeh this food. So then the Gemara is stuck again. We don't understand why we have a case where the food's brought into Yerushalayim that you wouldn't be able to eat, because Rav Yosef says there's still geniza here. And the Gemara says bilakuach. It was already purchased. Rashi details that it was purchased and it's tameh again. Or it's tameh, but for a different reason. It's at a later stage in this phase. So then says the Gemara on the top of Kuf Yud Gimel Amud Aleph, the very last blot of the Masechta, the Lifrike. So what? So he bought it and it's tameh. Big deal. Sell it. Do the same thing. How do we know that we could sell it here? Ditnan. The Mishnah writes, Halakuach bekesef meiser shenit ma'yifta. There too, you can also be podeh. No problem at all. We're good to go. You should be able, says the Gemara, to cash out no matter what. And if you're able to cash out, then there should not be geniza. You should be able to eat it. And therefore, back to our question, the Gemara says, Ki Reb Yehuda de Amar Yikaver. Reb Yehuda was of the opinion that in this case of Lakuach, we cannot be podeh. He doesn't agree with the Mishnah. He's a Tana, he's allowed. And he says there, you have to do Kvura. That's why our Mishnah says, Yignizu. Says the Gemara, well, wait 1 second. Ihachi, if it's true, according to Reb Yehuda, that a food that is tameh by Meiser Sheni can't be podeh, then why was this din taught by Ir Anidachas? Yachi, my Ir Anidachas. This din is true even not in an Ir Anidachas. If a food comes from outside a city, it is brought into a city, and it's purchased, and it's tameh, and you hold like Rabbi Yehuda, we're always going to say Yikaver and Gniza. That has nothing to do with Ir Anidachas. There's zero chiddush at all by teaching this in our Mishnah in the last parak of Achelik. That's just, it's a non-entity. Afilu de almanami. No matter what, it would be the same exact din. Ella says the Gemara, you're 100% right. How do we understand the conflicting opinions of Rav Chizda and Rav Yosef? Kuf Yud Gimel Amud Aleph 3 lines on Olam betahor. Really, we're talking about food that's tahor, not food that's tameh, like we tried in the last two answers. Uchegon de naful mechitzos, where the walls of Yerushalayim had fallen down. What does this have to do with anything? Well, I don't know any Torah, so therefore I didn't know this. Uchid Rava. Damar Rava. Mechitza. We need a mechitza for Meiser Sheni le'echol de'oraisa. You're not allowed to eat Meiser Sheni if the walls of Yerushalayim are not built. That's a din de'oraisa. It's of course. Baked into the fabric is that you cannot eat Meiser Sheni without walls. Liklot. The idea that when a food comes into Yerushalayim, that it morphs into becoming an edible food, that's a din derabanan. V'chigazu rabbanan, when would the rabbis allow the food that's tahor to come in to be eaten? That's ki isnehu l'mechitza. But ki lesnehu l'mechitza lo. But when there are no walls, we have no din of mechitzos koltin. Because we have no din of mechitzos koltin, so therefore, we must be talking about a case where it is Ir Hanidachas. We must be talking about where the food is brought in and it's taka tahor. And really, we shouldn't want to eat it because you're bringing it from outside to inside. In Yerushalayim, it's mechitzos koltos. We should have been matir because of mechitzos koltos. But we don't have mechitzos koltos because there are no walls. And therefore, geniza. And that's how we can make this an ukimta within the world of Ir Hanidachas. Super easy. I think I learned this Gemara 7 times. It is dizzying a little bit. It's not actually hard. It's one of those Gemaras. It's not like Yevamos. It just requires a bunch of chazaras to get it. It is gettable. Okay, let's continue. 5, 6 lines down at the 2 dots. Kisvei HaKodesh Yignazu. He says that if there are Kisvei HaKodesh, that they get buried. Says the Gemara. This goes against the shita that we saw earlier in this Masechta, one that I made reference to, I think yesterday or the day before, but I did so without thinking it through, because here the Gemara says that what I said then makes absolutely no sense. Masnisin, this Mishnah, which says that we bury Kisvei HaKodesh, is the Lo Rebbe Lazar, because the Tanya, this is a Gemara we saw not too long ago on Daf Ayin Aleph. Rebbe Lazar Omer, Kol ir sheyesh ba afilu mezuzah achas, eino nases ir anidachas. If there's even one mezuzah in a city, which is every city, I walk into these homes in the boondocks. The mezuzahs are on upside down, sideways, horizontal. Sometimes they're on kosher because the grandparents know the difference. Today I did a bris for a family. The mother's Israeli. And I said to the husband in front of her, "What's your Hebrew name?" The husband's like, "I don't know." The wife's like, "You don't know your Hebrew name?" She was like, I couldn't believe it. How far have we gone? Even in these homes, there are mezuzahs. There's always a mezuzah. What city could you possibly have? In Germany, there are mezuzahs. Still, adayin. There's no ir nidachas because of mezuzahs. Everything needs to be burned. You're not allowed to do that. But what does our Mishnah say? Geniza, no problem. No Geniza. Rebbe Lazar says, no Geniza. You're not allowed to burn an ir nidachas if there's even one piece of parchment there. I assume the same din applies by tefillin. I assume the same din applies. Kol shekain. There is a difference between them, which is that they're portable. Like something that's baked. I don't know if I'm making a real chiluk, but if it's part of a house, it's also usher to take down mezuzah. There's like I don't know if I'm right, but I still think it's true that by tefillin I don't know. Next, Reb Shimon Omer Amar Kodesh Baruch Hu. This is a little bit of a snippet that doesn't really explain things. You may recall that there's a machlokas in the Mishnah that if a city is burned down, one shita held you're not allowed to do anything with the city; it stays as is. And another shita held you can build ganos upardesim. You're allowed to build gardens and orchards. So we're going to talk about that machlokas. Lema, perhaps this machlokas is the Rav Avin Amar Rabbi La Kamiflage. The Amar Rav Avin Amar Rabbi La. Kol makom shata motze klal. This part's difficult. Kol makom shata motze klal be'aseh uprat below sa'aseh ein dana noso b'klal uprat. As if the klal uprat sugas weren't hard enough. So if you have a klal that's a mitzvah saseh, and in this case that means leave the land fallow. Uprat below sa'aseh, don't build. We have an aseh and a lo sa'aseh by the ir nidachas. Ein dana noso b'klal uprat. Then we don't do our typical limud of klal uprat. The rule of a klal uprat is we have a general rule, and the prat limits the general rule. The klal is a big rule. The prat says only with cases similar to this, but we don't say that. Says this unique shita of Rav Avin Barila, Amar Rav Barila. We don't say klal uprat when the klal is an aseh and the prat is a lo saseh. Demar Isle de Rabbi Avin, the shita that holds that you're not allowed to build ganos upardesim, they agree to the shita of Rav Avin. Therefore, there's no klal uprat. Therefore, there's no exceptions to the rule, and therefore you cannot build ganos upardesim. However, Umar Lesle de Rav Avin, the shita that holds that you're allowed to build ganos upardesim, says the following. He says, we do hold of a klal uprat when the klal is an aseh and the prat is a lo saseh. And because we hold of that, listen to this, the aseh is leave it fallow. The lav is don't rebuild it. Oh, don't rebuild it how? Like it was before. How else can you rebuild it? Ganos upardesim. So because he doesn't hold the Rav Avin of this unique rule in klal uprat, the extension of that is therefore that you just can't rebuild it as it was, but you can rebuild it into ganos upardesim. So it says the Gemara lo. That's actually the wrong analysis of this machlokas, and this is much easier. Dekule alma islahu de Rabbi Avin. Everyone agrees that you cannot learn a klal uprat when the klal is an aseh and the prat is a lo. Everyone agrees that that we don't make a klal uprat in those cases. The hacha b'haka miflage is so much easier. Mar savar od legamre mashma. That the pasuk says that you're not allowed to build this city ever again. And we just have a machlokes about it. One means legamre, you're never allowed to rebuild. Umar savar od lekama shayisa in an just like the way that it was, you can't rebuild it. Aval nasesu ganasu pardesim. So machlokes as to what I guess there's two approaches as to what the machlokes is between the two shitas in the Mishnayos. And one says yes, you're allowed to build ganasu pardesim, and some say no. Tanu Rabban, and the rabbis have taught us in a brisa. Hayu ba'ilanos tlushim. If there were trees that were already cut, asurin. Those you're not allowed to use. Mechubarin mutarin. Those are fine. Shel iracheres. If they come from another city, bein tlushin, bein mechubarin asur. No matter what, even if they're still attached to the ground, they're going to be asur. What's iracheres? What does that mean? So the Gemara says a third of the way down. Kuf Yud Gimel Amud Aleph. My iracheres. Amar Rav Chizda Yericho. This is a specific reference to the city of Yericho. Dichsiv. The pasuk says in Yehoshua. I'm just going to read the whole pasuk. The whole city gets destroyed. She's going to survive. Why does she get to survive? Because she saved the people. But otherwise, Yericho is going down. So that's what the pasuk says. What does the pasuk say about Yericho? Says the pasuk. This is the next a couple psukim later. Vayashba Yehoshua ba'es hahi lemor. What did he say? Arur ha'ish lifnei Hashem asher yakumu vana sa'ir hazos es Yericho. He says no one can rebuild Yericho. B'v'choru yisadena. If he does build it, he'll be burying his older child, Rachmana litzlan, uvetzeiro yatziv delase, and his youngest one will die when he builds the final door on the final house. Huge curse. This is not. It's an arur. It's a very, very stark language. Tanya, there's a brisa. It's actually seemingly not a brisa, but okay. Let's see what it says. Lo Yericho al shem ir acheres, v'lo ir acheres al shem Yericho. You can't build this city and call it something else, the actual footprint of Yericho, and you can't build another city and call it Yericho. You can't build Yericho and call it, Morristown.
In the United States of America, because I bet you there's a city named Yericho.
Jericho. Yeah. I have a feeling that it's actually Yericho. I don't know. I'm just saying that to actually call it Yericho, I would imagine. Right. I mean, it says Iracheres. That could be only in Eretz Yisrael, but in another place in Eretz Yisrael. But let's say, it was shaped in a circle. You move that circle 10 kilometers over and call it Yericho. That's Asur. And if you call Yericho, you do rebuild Yericho, but you call it another name. You call it Beersheba. It doesn't matter. That place cannot be built. Tichsiv, and the Gemara here switches over to Malachim. And here the Gemara says that Bana Chiel Beis Ha'eli, that's a person, Chiel, we're going to talk about him as Yericho. And look at what happened to him. Exactly what Yoshua said was going to happen to him. Be'aviram bechoro yisada. His first son Aviram died. Uviskuv tziro hitziv dulaseha. Almost a match to the psukim. So that's what happened. This guy Chiel is he shouldn't have done what he did, but he did it. Tanya, the Brisa says be'aviram bechoro rasha lo hayalo lilmod. He didn't learn from his older son. Biskuv Rasha, or Biskuv Tziro, according to some Gersos, Hayalo Lilmod, he should have learned from his younger son. Says the Gemara, I don't understand this brisa. Aviram Biskuv, my avud. What did the kids do? They were the kids. The father was the one who rebuilt the city. Says the Gemara, Hachi Kamar, Aviram Bechoro, Hayalo Lilmod Laoso Rasha Biskuv Tziro. He should have learned. Aviram was the son who died. After that happened, Chiel should have learned, and then he should not have had his younger son die. Mimash, and then the Gemara asks what sounds like a side question, but it's not. Mimash Mashanemar be'Aviram Bechoro. Once we know that Aviram is the oldest child, Eini Yodesh Skuv Tziro. Thank you very much. We're smart people. We can figure that out on our own. Says the Gemara, why does the pasuk actually detail for us that Skuv was the youngest? Every one of his children, from oldest to youngest, died in the process of him building Yericho.
So it's just not the oldest and the youngest.
Exactly. The reason why the pasuk references the oldest and then also says the youngest is that all of the kids fell asleep. I was totally a Freudian. All of the kids died. have to edit my first video in like 2000 blot. Okay. So, oh my gosh. Okay, says the Gemara as follows. Achav, the king Achav, the horrible one that we spoke about, one of the kings that has no chelik no haba. Achav was shoshvine haba. He was a neighbor to Chiel. These guys were like, they went to shul together, Kiddush club probably. Says the Gemara, Asa ihu ve'Eliyahu lemishal bishlama be'etamya. So Achav and Eliyahu Hanavi went to go pay a shiva call in Beit Tamya, in the house of Avelus. Yasiv Ka'amar. Achav says, and it doesn't sound tongue-in-cheek until you see the second part, but he says, Dilma ki melat Yehoshua hachilat lo Yericho al shem iracheres, lo iracheres al shem Yericho. Achav's like, maybe Chiel, maybe your kids perished because of the curse that Yehoshua gave. So Amar le Eliyahu Navi's like, yeah, bro, you don't mess around. Like this is an arur. Like if you know even as little Torah as we do, the word arur is a terrible word. Don't mess around. Eliyahu's like, in. Amar le, this was like a setup. Achav's like, no way. Hashta, he says, Hashta, levatisa de Moshe lo kamakaima. The curse that Moshe said, that didn't even come true. What's he talking about? Remember, Achav was like, he set up avodah zarah everywhere in Eretz Yisrael. If you go astray and you worship idols, and then the pasuk in Shema says, second paragraph, that if you do that, there's going to be no rain. Hahu gavra, Achav was talking about himself. Okim le avodas kochav malko, tell him. I put avodah zarah everywhere. Below shavik le mitra de mezal miskan. I can't even get to the avodah zarahs because there's so much rain. So you're telling me that the curse of Moshe Rabbeinu didn't pan out, but Levatis adi Yoshua Talmidei Mekaima? So, that's Givaldic. That's a great question. Now, listen, we don't understand that Kodesh Baruch Hu, Hashem is going to make sure the punishment happens in one way or another. Do we know the scope of how much rain? Maybe it's 20% less. We don't know. But Eliyahu is a kanoi. Miyad. Vayomer Eliyahu atishbi mitosh v'gilad. Chei Hashem Elokei Yisrael im yihi atalu matar. I'm going to make sure it doesn't rain. What did he do? Boi rachmei v'havu le aklida demitra v'kam ve'azal. He davened to HaKadosh Baruch Hu and said, please give me the key to the rain. And he turned off the spigot. No more rain. Why? Because he wanted to make sure that there wasn't a chilul Hashem. That the punishment that Moshe promised for v'sartem v'avadatem, which is lo yamatar, that it would play out. So he gets this little key and he turns off the rain. And then, Vayhi dvar Hashem elav lemor lech mizeh ufanisa lach kedma v'nisarta benachal karis. He says, I want you to go over there. V'haorvim mevim lo lechem ubasar baboker. And the Orvim, the ravens, were bringing Eliyahu food al derech nes. Where did the food come from? Mehecha. Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Rav mi beit tavche de Achav, from the butchers of Achav. I have 1,000 questions on this Gemara, none of which we have. What is this? What's with the ravens? Why is he being fed al derech nes? Is Achav's food kosher? The ravens went to the butcher shop and picked it up and brought it to Eliyahu while he was traveling. 1,000 questions. Then the pasuk says, "Vayhi miketz yamen vayivash hanachal ki lo yageshem ba'aretz." Kodesh Baruch Hu was trying to get the rain key back, but he gave the keys over to Eliyahu. So then, Kevan the Chazadi Katsara Ba'alma, because the Kodesh Baruch Hu saw that there was no water in the Nachal, and it was just like that wadi with like all dried out and caked out, but if there was water, it would fit nicely. So then, Vayhi Dvar Hashem Elav Lemor Kum Lech Tzarfasad, you should go over to this particular city. And in that, the rest of the psukim there, it says that he should stay at this particular woman's house, but other people there as well. The pasuk says, the child in that house got sick and the child died. Now, with Hakaras Hatov, Eliyahu wanted to be Machai the kid. He wanted to make the kid live again. He wanted to revive him. So he's like, look, we're close. Can you give me the key to Tchias HaMesim? I appreciate this person. She helped me. So Amar Le, HaKadosh Baruch Hu says to him, Shalosh maftechos lo nimsru l'shliach. There's 3 keys that we don't give over to people. Shel chaya, birth, v'shel gshamim, rain, v'shel Tchias HaMesim, and of Tchias HaMesim. Yomru, you know what the angels are going to say if I give you 2 of them? Shtaim biad Talmud va'achas biad harav. Eliyahu is going to get the two keys, one of which is going to be for Tchias HaMesim, one of which is going to be for rain. He's got 2 out of the 3 keys that I'm not supposed to be giving out. So what did Eliyahu do? He made a cheshbon. Fine. I see ha v'shakil hai. He gave back one and took back the other. He gave back the key for rain, and he took the key for Tchias HaMesim, and he was Mechayah the child. And then it said, the pasuk says that Achav is going to see that there's now some rain because the keys went back to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu, for whatever his cheshbonos where he wanted it to rain. 3 lines from the bottom. A person from the Galilee said to Rav Chizah, Mashal de Eliyahu lema davar domeh. What is the mashal of Eliyahu's behavior like? Legavra de tarke legale ve'avde lemifteche. He locked up his stuff and then he lost the key. So what did he do? He ended up giving back the key to HaKadosh Baruch Hu for the rain. He couldn't bring out what he wanted to bring out at the Shiva house anymore because he didn't have the key anymore. So that was the mashal. Dorash Rav Yossi Bitzipori, Abba Eliyahu, which is just a term of endearment about Abba Eliyahu, but the next line is not so nice. Our final turn of the Masechta, Kaptan Hava. He was a very strict person. Look at Rashi, Haya Kaptan, Sheka'as al Achav, the Amar, Chei Hashem im yeh hashanim ha'ele talma umatar. He said he was a Kaptan. So says the Gemara, Ragil lemese gabe. Eliyahu Navi used to be a regular by this Rabbi Yossi Bitzipori. He was a regular by him. It says the Gemara, there were a few days where Eliyahu Navi didn't show up. And finally, Kiasa, when Eliyahu Navi did show up, Amar Le, Rabbi Yossi says, Amai lo asamar. He says to Eliyahu, where were you? We have a chavrusa. You were skipping the base medrash. Come sit and learn with me. Amar Le, Eliyahu Navi says back to Rabbi Yossi, well, I was upset because Kaptan Karisli. You called me someone who's very makbid. You know what Rabbi Yossi says? He pushes it right back. Amar Le, Hadikaman dikakapid mar. This is the example of you being makbid. By saying that I called you makbid and you're still holding on to it. You're makbid, you're a kaptan, just accept it. It's just who you are. All right, the last is a little bit of an agadata about good people and bad people. The pasuk says, "V'lo yidbak biyadchem umam min acherem." Don't take anything from the spoils, from that which needs to be destroyed. Kol zman sherishaim ba'olam charon af ba'olam. Man rishaim, Amar Rav Yosef Ganvi. This we spoke about already, that stealing things is like such a fundamental crime. It means you don't believe that a Kadosh Baruch Hu is in charge. It's like an apikoristic. There are other ashatn is loved. That doesn't. Okay, we have a Yetzer Hara. I understand we have Yetzer Hara, but when you're taking money from other people, so that's already that's why everything happened with the Mabul, as we saw. There were other crimes that we would cheshbon were worse. As a rayos, and the Gemara says that everybody was sleeping with everybody: animals, people with animals, animal types with other animal types. But that wasn't the chasima for, it was Geneva. So the Gemara says Geneva is the terrible one. Tana Rabbanon. Rasha bala olam, Charon bala olam. One of Russia's in the world. Then Charon, anger is in the world. Shneemar, bevo Rasha gam babuz, that there's going to be anger. Vim kalon cherpa, and then there's also going to be cherpa, just embarrassment. Rasha avad mina olam, when a Rasha leaves the world, tova bala olam givaldik. Shalom, see you later. These people, they can go, according to the Gemara. That when a Russia is lost, that's joyful. Tzaddik niftar mina olam. When a tzaddik dies from the world, Rab al olam. The exact opposite, obviously, because he's a tzaddik. Shenemar tzaddik avad ve'ein ish sam alev. When he dies, nobody else pays attention to what the importance of anymore. Va'anshe chesed ne'asavin be'ein mevi. And then people don't understand anything. Ki mipnei hara ne'asaf tzaddik. And it's actually because of the bad thing that the tzaddik died. And for the last line of the Masechta, tzaddik bala olam. When a tzaddik comes into the world, tova ba'al olam, shene'emar, as the pasuk says, this is our comfort. We have a tzaddik in our hands. And hadron Allah kol Yisrael yeshtam chelek uslika lo Maseches Sanhedrin. Baruch Hashem. Mazel tov to all of you who have finished. Who wants to do the Siyum? Anybody? I'm allowed to read the hadron in theory, but I really didn't finish. So, all right, Michael. You're up.
Hadin Allah himself Sanhedrin, Hadalan, Allah himself Sanhedrin, Hadalan, La Nisa say Minahum myself Sanhedrin, La Tishna say Minan, La Bama, Dem La Bama Darcy, Hadin Allah himself Sanhedrin, Hadalan, Dedach Allah himself Sanhedrin, Dedach Allah, La Nisa say Minahum myself Sanhedrin, La Tishna say Minan, La Bama Hadem Bama Darcy, Nakan Elaine William. To the hay, Sarasava, Munakin, Wilamazel, Maba, Hanina Barpapa, Rami Barpapa, Nachman Barpapa, Afi Barpapa, Amarat, Mari Barpapa, Rafam Barpapa, Rafi Barpapa, Soha Barpapa, Ada Barpapa, Daru Barpapa, Harabna Adnailino, Ati Veray, Sarasava, Vivino, Habit Zera. Mia Kulanu, Nachman, with the same Habit Zera, Kulanu, Yodesh, Maka, Days, Harisal Ishma. Muavel Tachmeni, Misrasafa, Kilam, Healy. Bi Tamim v'chukacha laman lo evosh v'yolam lo eshkach v'chukacha ki vam ki yisani baruch atah Adonai lamdeni chukacha amen 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 tel v'ed modim anachnu l'fanacha na Eloheinu v'layavazenu shesam kachagim v'yoshvei v'es hamidrash v'lo sam kachagim v'yoshvei karanos Shanu mashkim v'hem mashkim v'ad mashkim v'vrei Torah v'hem mashkim v'vrei Mitzvah Manu Safar v'hem Milim v'kabim Safar Anu Ratzim v'hem Ratzim Anu Ratzim l'fay olamaba v'hem Ratzim l'v'shachas v'namar v'atah Elohim t'veridem v'ver shachas anshe damim v'mermaglo yachatzu yemeyam v'aniyotach bach Yeratzom l'fanacha Adonai Elohim l'tzom t'zveni l'sayim l'sachas Sanhedrin Kol t'zveni l'zizchil l'sachtos l'farim l'chemim l'temim l'omol l'omil l'shmor l'asol l'chaim l'kol divrei t'ramus l'risacha v'ahava v'zechuz kol t'tanani ha'mirim tamidei chachamim ya'amod li l'zari shalosh ramus hata mipi Zari v'zer zari ad olam nitzikim bi v'tizolacha b'anechach ha'osach v'shal tishmor elecha ha'kitzosa hi tishisacha ki v'yarbu yamecha v'yatifu lecha shnas chayim orach yamim v'mina v'zolach Oh, sure, but Adonai owes the money to him, and